There are currently billions of dollars in inventory just sitting in warehouses around the world right now. I mean, gathering dust, becoming obsolete, or literally just rotting away. And it's not because people don't want the stuff, and it's not because of some natural disaster.
No, it's usually because of a math error or
hmm
really a communication breakdown that happened maybe 3 months ago and thousands of miles away.
It is basically the single most expensive game of telephone in the global economy. So we're doing a deep dive today into the bullwhip effect. And before you tune out because supply chain logistics sounds like a cure for insomnia,
Right. It sounds a bit dry.
yeah, but let's be clear. This is exactly why you couldn't buy toilet paper in 2020 and why there was suddenly way, way too much of it in 2021.
Exactly. It explains the clearance rack, the stock out, and why these massive billion-dollar companies sometimes just collapse because of a phantom boom that never actually existed in the real world.
We've got a great stack of research here today, some academic papers, business case studies, and the mission for this deep dive is to trace how a tiny, almost imperceptible fluctuation in what you buy at the local store can just spiral into absolute chaotic overproduction for a manufacturer on the other side of the planet.
And we aren't just talking about, oops, we made too many widgets. We're talking about a systemic failure that is almost built into the actual physics of how modern supply chains work, because communication is imperfect.
Let's start with that visual because the name, the bullwhip effect, it isn't just a cool buzzword. It comes from the actual mechanics of a whip.
Right. Picture the physics of it. So you hold the handle of the whip. That handle represents the retailer. That's the point where the customer actually interacts and buys the product.
And then the tip of the whip, the very end of that long piece of leather, that's the manufacturer, the factory that's making the stuff.
Exactly. Now, if you are holding that handle and you give your wrist just a tiny flick, like a variance of maybe 2 inches, what happens to the tip of the whip?
It snaps. I mean, it travels feet, not inches. It literally breaks the sound barrier.
Right. That amplification is the key to all of this. A small deviation at the demand end, down at the retailer, amplifies as it travels up the chain. So it goes to the wholesaler, then the distributor, and finally the manufacturer.
So by the time that signal reaches the factory,
A 5% shift in customer buying habits might look like a 50% shift in demand of the factory.
which implies that the entities furthest away from the customer, the ones who are, investing the most capital in heavy machinery and raw materials, they are operating on the absolute worst data.
They really are. They have the lowest visibility and the highest volatility. It's this wild paradox. You'd think the factory would be the anchor of the whole system, but in this scenario, they're the ones getting whipped around the hardest.
Now, the standard explanation for this is usually just people say it's forecasting errors. Like the retailer guesses wrong, so the wholesaler guesses wronger. But looking through the source material, it's deeper than just bad guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
There are structural mechanics at play here, right?
Yeah, it's not just that people are bad at math. It's that rational decisions at one level create completely irrational outcomes at the next level up. So let's trace the chain of command here.
Okay. Retailer to wholesaler to distributor to manufacturer.
Right. Normally, retailers use immediate sales data to request products, and distributors pass this to producers. That is standard. But there are two main distortion points where this breaks down.
And the first one is that inaccurate forecasting we mentioned, where a mistake just snowballs.
Exactly. But the second one is even more interesting. It's drawing the wrong conclusions from the right data. Even if the retailer is totally right about a local sales spike, the chain creates this telephone game effect where the reasoning gets entirely lost.
The reasoning, the why.
Yes. Plus, you have the psychology of the safety buffer. Wholesalers and manufacturers often increase their orders even more than what was requested, just to create a buffer. They assume the trend is going to keep growing.
Just in case. That makes sense. I mean, to really ground this, I want to walk through the specific case study from the briefing. It uses a very simple product, hot chocolate, but I really want to look at the numbers because that's where you see the damage happen.
It's a fantastic example because it isolates the variables perfectly.
So here's the baseline scenario. A local retailer sells 100 cups of hot chocolate a day. Inventory is lean, cash flow is good, everything is predictable.
A nice, steady state.
Right. Then we have the trigger event, a cold snap. One freezing Tuesday, sales jump to 120 cups.
So that's a 20% increase. It's significant, sure, but in the grand scheme of things, it's just a weather anomaly.
The retailer, however, looks at their empty shelf at the end of the day, and they equate stock out with lost revenue. Panic sets in a little bit. They don't want to just replenish what they sold. They want a buffer.
Right, they're adding a safety margin.
Exactly. So they order 150 units.
Because they're thinking, what if it stays cold all week? I can't run out again.
Now, the distributor receives this order. They usually see orders for 100. Now they see 150. But they don't check the local weather report for that one specific town.
No, they just see a spreadsheet.
Right. They just see the raw numbers.
And remember, they service multiple towns. If they see an uptick here, they might assume it's a broader regional trend. And they have their own lead times to worry about. If they run out, they lose their retail customers. So what do? They amplify the signal again.
They pad it.
Exactly. They order 180 units from the manufacturer to cover themselves and anticipate other retailers asking for more soon.
This is wild. So we've gone from a 20-unit actual increase at the street level to an 80-unit increase at the manufacturing level. We have basically quadrupled the signal.
We have. And the manufacturer, sitting at the very end of the whip, has the longest lead time of anyone. They can't just spin up a factory line in an hour.
Right. It takes weeks. You have to source the cocoa, the packaging, schedule the labor shifts.
Exactly. So they look at this massive spike and they think, wow, this is the new baseline. Hot chocolate is trending.
So they fully commit. They buy raw materials for 200 units, factoring in their own safety buffers and economies of scale. They are now geared up for just a massive winter season.
And then the weather changes.
Tuesday passes, it warms up by Thursday, demand drops right back down to 100 cups.
And here comes the crash. The retailer realizes they are suddenly completely overstocked. So they stop ordering entirely just to burn off the extra 50 cups of inventory they have sitting in the back room.
Which means the distributor suddenly sees their incoming orders drop to zero.
They panic. Now they have a massive warehouse rapidly filling up with the 180 units they ordered. So they slam the brakes and stop ordering from the manufacturer.
And the manufacturers hit the absolute hardest. They just ramped up production to 200, hire extra people maybe, and suddenly the market is completely dead.
They are sitting on a mountain of inventory that they cannot sell.
It's the inventory glut.
Yeah. And this brings us into the deeper nuances of why we get this so wrong. Let's talk about lag time, because logistics speed is a critical factor here.
Right, because large operations take time to pivot.
Exactly. By the time that manufacturer actually ramps up their output and gets the product ready to ship, the conditions that caused the change in the first place.
The cool Tuesday.
Right, the cold Tuesday has completely passed. So the manufacturer is basically reacting to old news, which makes their massive reaction even more incorrect.
It's like steering a giant cargo ship. By the time you turn the wheel, the obstacle you were trying to avoid is already behind you, and now you're just driving into a new problem.
That's a great way to put it. And there's another layer to this complexity. The local versus global context.
Oh, the local festival example from the source material.
Yes. Think about it. If a retailer sells more hot chocolate because there's a local winter festival in their town, the retailer knows exactly why demand spiked. They know it's temporary. It's a 3-day event.
Right, but they still have to order more to meet that 3-day demand.
Exactly. But the distributor, they just see the purchase order. They don't know about the festival. They assume there's a broad increase in demand for hot chocolate everywhere.
Because they lack the local context.
Yes. The further up the chain you go, the less context you have. And the more likely you are to fundamentally misunderstand the actual reason for the buy.
And the consequences of this, it's not just, oh, well, we have too many paper cups. Let's talk about the real-world costs here, the operational disruption.
Right, the costs are staggering. First, you have storage. Warehousing excess goods is incredibly expensive. You're paying for square footage, climate control, security.
And transportation to get it to those warehouses. And if we're talking about hot chocolate or any perishable good, you have spoilage.
Exactly. The product might literally rot before you can sell it.
But the economic impact goes way beyond just the storage fees. The business fallout is severe. You've got lost revenue, delayed shipments for other goods, because the trucks are full of hot chocolate nobody wants.
Overinvestment in production machinery. Companies will buy million-dollar machines to meet a demand spike that vanishes a week later.
And we have to highlight the human cost here. The source material specifically mentions layoffs and bankruptcies.
It's the boom and bust cycle for labor. Companies might hire a ton of workers, maybe pay overtime, bring on contractors for a boom that doesn't actually exist.
And then they have to fire them when reality sets in.
Right. The bullwhip effect creates artificial volatility in the job market. People's livelihoods get jerked around because of a distorted data signal.
So we've diagnosed the illness. We know it's a problem of imperfect information, amplified by distance and lack of context. And usually, you only even realize a bullwhip event happened after the fact, right? When the warehouse is already full.
Exactly. It's a retrospective diagnosis most of the time.
So how do we fix it? The research points out three key solutions for taming the whip. Let's walk through them.
Okay, the first one is clear, consistent communication.
Which sounds obvious, right? Just talk to each other.
It sounds obvious, but it's fundamentally about sharing data up and down the chain. So a distributor knows why a retailer is ordering more.
Like tagging the order with context. Hey, this is just for a cold day, or hey, this is for a local festival.
Exactly. Differentiating between a temporary anomaly and a genuine trending product. If the manufacturer knows it's just a local festival, they won't build a new factory.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, the second fix, taking a broader viewpoint in forecasting.
This means avoiding those knee-jerk reactions to temporary shifts. Instead of just looking at yesterday's sales to determine tomorrow's orders, companies need to look at the big picture: historical data, seasonal trends, macroeconomic factors.
Don't just react to the flick of the wrist, look at the whole motion.
Precisely. You have to smooth out the data before you act on it.
And the third solution is speed and agility, increasing the speed of response.
This is huge. If a factory can change its output quickly, say they have agile manufacturing lines that can switch products in a day instead of a month, they don't need to hoard massive amounts of buffer stock.
Because they don't have that massive lag time to worry about.
Right. They can adjust before the trend dies. If you reduce the lead time, you drastically reduce the fear that causes the overordering in the first place.
So it's about shortening the whip itself.
Exactly. A shorter whip can't snap as violently.
So the big takeaway here is that the bullwhip effect is really just an error of perception that gets amplified by distance.
That is the perfect way to summarize it.
So for you listening, the next time you walk into a store and you see a massive clearance sale, or conversely, a totally empty shelf where a basic product should be,
You are likely witnessing the tail end of a bullwhip event.
yeah, you're seeing the physical wreckage of a communication breakdown. But it leaves me with a really provocative thought to close on. We have the technology to share data instantly. We literally have global, real-time networks.
We do.
So if the solution is simply better communication, why is it still so hard for modern companies to talk to each other?
Trust. It usually comes down to trust.
Right. But is the new technology actually solving this? Or are these automated ordering algorithms just making the reactions faster and even more volatile?
That's the scary part. If
Or-
an AI misinterprets the data, it can snap the whip in milliseconds.
Exactly. Are we smoothing out the system, or are we just teaching the system to panic at the speed of light? It really makes you think about the human element behind all this data.
It absolutely does.
Well, that's all for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.